Coming to you live from WRUE in Tennessee, it's the Scribbling Woman.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rue. I'm a scribbling woman, and so are you, and that's why we're having this conversation. Here we talk about creating a writerly life that is unique to you, no matter your age, your season, or the state of your current creative pursuits. You are now an official Scribbly, so let's talk. You know, in this season of The Scribbling Woman, we're focusing on how we keep writing, keep creating, even when we get to that what is the point thing. We're setting aside outcomes and we're honing in on our intentions, those things that motivate us. And I think the truest motivator is that we have something to say. And to help us look at that today is our guest, Jim.
From the Chicago area, it's Joanna Davidson Politano.
Joanna, welcome. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here, Nancy.
Well, you are one of my absolute favorite authors. You become a recent addition to that list of writers that I just salivate over. I think I've devoured most of your historical novels, including Midnight Dance, Finding Lady Enderley, Lady Jane Disappears, A Rumored Fortune, and my personal favorite is The Love Note. And I just ordered The Last Melody and The Elusive Truth of Lily Temple. I don't know how I missed that. Have I missed any of them?
I think that's it. I have a new one coming out in April, but those are all the published.
Oh, good, good. Tell us the title.
That one is called The Curious Inheritance of Blakely House.
You have come up with the most wonderful titles, and these are all Victorians, right?
Yeah, actually, my publisher comes up with all the titles. I just come up with the story.
Absolutely wonderful. It takes a team, right?
Yes, very much.
And it sounds like they're romance novels, but they really are love stories with, well, they're amazing stories, first of all. And your characters are so real, they practically have a pulse. And yet there's a deep meaning to every one of your novels that I've read. I never feel like I've been herded by an agenda or been spiritually mugged. And yet when I get to that final page, there's no doubt that I'm taking away something valuable, even if I have to ponder what that is for a while. And that's what we're going to talk about today, Joanna, how you do that. So first of all, in what way do you think of the meaning that wants to emerge from your work? Do you have an image for that?
I think the best way to describe it is sort of like a flower petal that opens just petal by petal. It kind of peels back through the whole entire writing process. Or possibly maybe like stained glass, where there's a bunch of broken colored pieces of glass that I don't really know what to do with. But in the end, God makes a whole picture out of it. And then just like kind of like sunlight shines through a stained glass window, his presence kind of like will shine through something that he's allowed to participate in.
So this is really, writing is a spiritual experience for you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So then I was going to ask you when in your writing process that happens, but it sounds like it happens throughout the entire story.
Oh, yes. It's a very ongoing process. I never even know what the full picture of the theme is and what God's creating until he's done. And actually, in the book that you mentioned, The Love Note, I thought I knew what God was trying to say throughout the book. And so I kept trying to shoehorn that in. And it was a piece of it. But then when I got to the very end of the book, God showed me something completely different than he'd been weaving in the whole time. When I looked back over it, I was like, oh, and it was totally different than the theme I'd been trying to bring out. But it was just like this great, big, invisible truth that was hovering over the whole story.
How does that feel when you realize that that's what's happened?
It's so humbling. It's so beautiful to think that the creator of the universe wants to work with me directly. There's nothing cooler.
No, that is absolutely the truth. You managed to do this, as I said, without spiritually mugging your audience, shoving the dove down their throat. How do you avoid doing that? Because there's a lot of Christian fiction that does feel like a sermon with characters.
Sure. Oh, yeah. To be honest, I avoid teaching altogether. I guess I have a very strong desire to express God to the world, but I don't necessarily have a specific message that I'm trying to teach with each book. So the secret to it is to just avoid teaching, period. Because God didn't invite me into writing because I was like anointed with some holy wisdom, but because of intimacy with him. He uses my willingness more than like my wisdom, and my surrender more than my cleverness, to speak truth through stories that are like just so much bigger than what I could come up with in my own limited human experience. And setting out to teach what we know always limits our work, because then we start out with an agenda, and it keeps God minimal and sidelined in the process.
I like that. So it's not like, here's the call, here's the message, now you do it,
Exactly. It takes a
right?
lot of the weight off to realize that it's a partnership.
And this is going to happen if you show up on the page, right?
Yes.
So this is not a question that we talked about beforehand, but how do you get that intimacy in the first place? Because this goes way back before sitting down and putting your fingers on the keyboard.
Absolutely. Honestly, a lot of the intimacy that I have with God was built through storytelling. I've been writing since I was in second grade, and it's just,
Okay, like 7 years old.
yeah. So it's just something that evolved as like a language that we speak. So I ask him the big questions, and we kind of hash it out through story. But a lot of it is like I have to start with saturating myself with God. And I think this was something that I put in the love note too, actually. But when you saturate your heart with God, everything that comes out of your heart is just going to be drenched in Him. Whether or not you are directly talking about God, like the book of Esther never mentions the name of God. C.S. Lewis books never mention God or the Bible, but they're so
Right.
full of truth, right? They're so full of scripture. So you have to start with saturating your heart. You have to have that relationship independent of your writing, independent of any results you hope to get from it. Just that relationship with God, so that everything that you create can come out of that.
So that's why you never have someone preaching a sermon,
Right.
and I never see this paragraph that sums it all up just in case we missed it.
Well, you
Right.
know that quote that says, always share the gospel, and if necessary, use words. That,
Right. I think it was St. Francis of Assisi who
that
said
does
that.
seem right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely how I
Yeah.
approach storytelling.
Well, it shows. And I think that's why even people who are not overtly Christian are so taken with it. And of course, you also include so much marvelous information about the Victorian era, and you explore things that we wouldn't have thought of, like what does it mean to be a ballet dancer, a ballerina in that time when that was mostly a male occupation, right? You cover things that most of us have never thought of. So that again makes it so real. It gives it a context. What is it that drew you to the Victorian era?
Actually, when I started writing, the first things that I tried to get published were World War II novels, and I enjoyed them a lot. But then when I started having children, I quit trying to get published. And I couldn't turn that part of my brain off. So I just started writing for fun. And what came out was Victorian era, kind of like Gothic fiction, because that's what a lot of stuff that I had read growing up. So the Bronte sisters, Daphne du Maurier, Jane Austen,
Oh,
Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy. And so that became almost like a natural storytelling voice for me. And I've always just been fascinated with the Victorian era. It's close enough to our era that it's not the ancient world, so it's a little bit understandable, but it's far enough removed that we can put our situations on their lives and let it play out a little bit differently than real life.
so it's sort of that degree of separation that makes it easier for us. It's harder with contemporary because we continually compare our life situation to what's going on with the characters.
Yes.
The other thing that I love, that I think that that lends to this meaning that you get across, is that you don't glorify all things Victoriana.
No, there was definitely a lot of gritty, grim reality, and the way they viewed women and the way they viewed marriage and commitment and money and everything was just a lot of it had errors and issues that probably didn't glorify God.
And we can see the echoes of that even now.
For sure. Yeah. Every era
Right?
has its issues, right?
Yes. Yes, it does. And sometimes it takes centuries to resolve them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, Joanna, you are multi published. Would you have kept writing if that weren't the case? If Baker hadn't come along and said, "You're amazing, I'm going to publish all your novels"?
Oh, yes. I actually, when I started writing in second grade, um, it was just for fun. And I didn't even attempt to have any novels published until I was late 20s, early 30s, I think, because they were just for me and God. And having something
Mm-hmm.
published was just icing on the cake. It was never the main point.
Good, good, because that helps all of us scribblies to let go again of outcomes and write from your heart first.
Sure. I had a writing mentor who asked a class once, if God asked you to write something and he said, now I want you to put it in a drawer, that was just for us, would that be okay with you? And so I had to kind of
Love
wrestle with
that.
that and say, yeah, that would be okay. Just because I love stories. I love storytelling and I love God. I love connecting with God in that unique way. So other people getting to read over my shoulder what God and I are doing, that's really fun. I love being able to connect with other people. But the heart of it is the writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that your helper I hear barking in the background?
Yes, I apologize. He's guarding us
Oh,
against the squirrels.
as well, he should. And most of the scribblies, when we get together on a Zoom session, have a cat or a dog or a baby. We've even had a
Oh,
parrot in the
nice.
mix, and they are the most disruptive, can I just say.
Parrots are not quiet.
So, Joanna, as we continue our series on setting our creative intentions and staying committed to them, you've really given us a lot to think about. And I think all of our viewers are going to now want to ponder more deeply what it is that's burning in us, that meaning that is our motivation. So thank you so much for being here. And oh, by the way, if our viewers want to know about more about you and your books, how can they find you?
My website is jdpstories.com, just my initials, JDP. I have a newsletter sign up on there. That is how
Okay.
all my first news comes out. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
Well, Joanna, you have so much wonderful stuff to say on your website. And so it isn't just about go buy the books. You really are a companion on the way.
Well, thank you.
It's been an honor to have you. Those of you who are tuning in, if you want to continue this journey, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, scribble on.